The cart jolts to a stop. For a long time, the only sound has been the squeaking of the wooden axle and the soft thud of the OXS hooves on the dirt path. You haven't dared to look out from under the rough burlap covering, but you can feel a change in the air. The dull, earthy smell of the countryside is gone, replaced by something thicker. It's a complex cocktail of scents: sweet incense, grilling fish, cheap steak, and something else. Something vaguely metallic and unclean, lingering beneath it all. A hand, not a gentle one, pulls back the cover. You blink, your eyes struggling to adjust to the sudden explosion of lightened color. You are parked just outside a massive, imposing gate. It's more than just an entrance. It's a barrier, a clear line dividing the world you knew from the one you are about to enter. This is the Great Gate of Yoshiwara, the only official way in or out. Once you pass through it, you are no longer in the city of Edo. You are in a city within the city, an island of pleasures surrounded by a moat, a place with its own laws, its own rulers, and its own definition of time. You're pushed off the cart, your bare feet landing in the muddy, trodden ground. The man who bought you, or perhaps HES, just delivering you. It's all a blur shoves a small, coarse bundle into your hands. It's everything you own. He says nothing, just points toward the gate. You're on your own. As you take your first hesitant steps, you realize the ground is vibrating slightly, a constant drum of activity. The air hums with the sound of 1,000 conversations, the high-pitched plucking of shinsen, and the rhythmic clacking of countless wooden sandals on the packed earth. You pass under the shadow of the gate. The world inside is a dizzying, overwhelming assault on the senses. Lanterns, hundreds of them, hang from every eave, casting a warm, flickering glow that makes everything seem unreal, like a dream. The main street, the Nakanocho, is a river of people. Samurai with their 2 swords tucked into their belts, wealthy merchants in fine silks, and rowdy groups of men all flow past you, and then you see them. The women, they are displayed in latticed rooms that open onto the street, sitting perfectly still like exquisite dolls in a box. Their faces are painted a stark, perfect white. Their kimonos are a riot of color: crimson, indigo, gold so elaborate you can't imagine how one person could put them on alone. Their hair is a marvel of engineering, sculpted into massive, gleaming structures adorned with dozens of pins, combs, and ornaments. They are the most beautiful and terrifying things you have ever seen. This is what you are here to become. A sharp-faced woman with a clipboard-like ledger seems to appear from nowhere. She looks you up and down, a flicker of disdain in her eyes. Another one, she mutters, before grabbing your arm with a grip like iron. She starts pulling you down a side alley, away from the glittering main street. The alley is narrower, darker. The glamorous illusion of the Nakanocho quickly evaporates. Here, the smells are stronger: stale cooking oil, overflowing drains, unwashed bodies. You can hear coughing from open windows and the sharp cry of a baby. This is the backstage area of the grand performance. This is where the real work happens, and where your new life begins. The woman pulls you toward a large wooden building, a place that will become your home, your school, and your prison. As the paper door slides shut behind you, the vibrant noise of the Yoshiwara fades to a muffled hum. It feels a world away, even though it's only a few feet. For the first time, a profound and chilling silence settles in your heart. You are no longer a person. You are an investment. And here, in this dimly lit corridor that smells of old wooden floor polish, your training and your erasure is about to start. Historians still argue about the precise moment a girl in Yoshiwara lost her hope. But for you, it feels like it might be right now. The corridor is long and polished to a dark sheen, reflecting the faint light from the paper-covered windows. Your bare feet make no sound on the cool wood. The woman you will soon learn her title is your right, a manager of the Courtesans, a combination of den mother, drill sergeant, and ruthless accountant drags you to a sliding door and pushes it open without knocking. She motions for you to enter. You step inside and immediately drop to your knees, your forehead touching the woven tatami mat. It's an instinct, a gesture of deference you've been taught since you could walk. The room is sparse, A single low desk of dark lacquer sits in the center. On it, an inkstone, a collection of brushes, and a neat stack of paper. The air is thick with the scent of old tatami mats, dried ink, and the faint, sweet smell of clove incense. A man is sitting behind the desk. He doesn't look up immediately, instead finishing a line of calligraphy with a slow, deliberate stroke. He is not old, but not young either. His face is a placid mask, his eyes dark and unreadable. He wears a simple, dark kimono, but the quality of the silk tells you he is a man of immense power here. This is the Kuruwai in US High, the owner of this establishment and, by extension, the owner of you. Finally, he sets his brush down and looks at you. It's not a curious look, or a kind one. He looks at you not as a person, but as a horse. HES thinking of buying. Are your teeth good? Is your frame sturdy? It's a humiliating, silent appraisal that seems to go on for an eternity. The Yarai kneels beside you, though with far more confidence. She begins the interrogation. Name, she asks, her voice sharp and businesslike. You whisper the name your mother gave you. It feels strange and foreign in this room. Age, you tell her. Where are you from? You name your village, a place that now seems like it belongs to another lifetime. The woman makes notes with a small brush on a scroll of paper. Your past, your entire existence up to this point, is reduced to 3 short entries in a ledger. The owner says nothing. His fingers steep lead in front of him, his gaze never leaving you. He seems to be calculating sums in his head, weighing the cost of your purchase against your potential earnings. Then he speaks. His voice is quiet, almost gentle, which makes his words all the more chilling. That name you just spoke, he says, forget it. It does not exist here. The girl from that village died on the road to Yoshiwara. Do you understand? You nod, your forehead still pressed to the floor. You don't understand. Not really, but you know. This is an order you cannot disobey. A part of you is being amputated, right here in this quiet, incense-scented room. He gestures to the Yarite, who dips a brush in the ink. She is small, like a young tree. Let's call her Komatsu, Little Pie. The name hangs in the air. Komatsu, it's a pretty name, a poetic name, but it has nothing to do with you. It feels like a costume you are being forced to wear. The owner picks up his own brush and, on a fresh sheet of pristine white paper, he writes the 2 characters for your new name, Xiaosong. The strokes are elegant, a work of art. The ink is black and permanent. This practice of bestowing a Genji no, or a professional name, was universal in Yoshiwara. It was the first and most crucial step in transforming a girl into a commodity. Often, these names were drawn from classical literature or poetry, lending a veneer of high culture to a brutal business. The Yarite then adds a piece of information, a little tidbit meant to be an honor, but which lands like a stone in your gut. The last Komatsu was very successful. She says coolly, she had a patron who adored her. Do not bring shame to the name. And there it is. A little known fact about these names is that they were often recycled. You are not the first Komatsu of this house, and you probably won't be the last. You are inheriting a brand, a reputation built by another woman. Her successes are now your benchmark, and her failures, whatever they were, are a silent warning. What happened to her? Was she bought out? Did she fall ill? Did she simply get too old? No one says. The silence is your answer. Historians and sociologists can debate the psychology of this ritual for years, whether stripping a girl of her name was a final, devastating cruelty or, in a strange way, a form of protection, severing her from a past that could bring her shame and allowing her to compartmentalize her new life. But for you, kneeling on this floor, it feels like a profound violation. Your very soul has been hollowed out, ready to be filled whatever they decide to put inside. The owner gives a slight, dismissive wave of his hand. The audience is over. The Yarite grabs your arm and pulls you to your feet. As she leads you back into the polished hallway, you mouth the new name silently. Komatsu. The syllables feel like pebbles in your mouth. They don't belong to you. that they are all you have now. Your old self is gone, documented and filed away in a ledger. Now, the work of building a new one, a profitable one, begins. And that construction starts not with your mind, but with your body. The Yarite leads you deeper into the sprawling, labyrinthine building. It's a maze of identical-looking corridors and paper doors. The sounds of the house are more distinct now. The muffled twang of a shamisen being practiced poorly. A burst of high-pitched laughter from a distant room. The soft, rhythmic sweeping of a broom. It smells of floor wax, tatami, and something faintly medicinal. She slides open a door to a large room, and the noise level triples. This is the main living space for the junior members of the house. The girls who are not yet courtesans. You are now a Keamuro, a child attendant, and this is your new world. The room is a chaotic jumble of activity. About a dozen other girls, ranging from your age to a few years older, are scattered across the tatami mats. Some are mending kimonos, their small fingers working nimbly with needles and thread. Others are huddled over a board game. Their chatter fast, clipped language you barely understand. A pair of older girls are practicing a dance, their movements still clumsy and uncoordinated. As you enter, all activity stops. A dozen pairs of eyes turn to you. It's the same look you received from the owner, but with a different flavor. It's not appraisal, it's assessment. You are new competition, a new variable in their rigidly structured ecosystem. You are a potential friend, but more likely, a rival. The Yarite announces your new name, Komatsu, to the room. A few of the girls giggle. One whispers something to her neighbor, and they both suppress a smirk. You feel your face flush with heat. You are an outsider, and they are making sure you know it. This is Hannah, the Yarite says, pointing to an older girl, perhaps 14 or 15. She has a serious face and an air of authority. She is the aunt and older sister for this group. You will do as she says. Hannah gives you a brief, business-like nod. She is a Shinzo, a courtesan in training, one step above you on the ladder. Her position gives her authority over the Keamuro. She is your immediate superior and your guide. Her role is to teach you the intricate rules and customs of the house, but also to enforce its discipline. Your relationship with these sisters will be one of the most complex aspects of your life. The house is structured like a family, with the owner as the father, his wife as the mother, and the courtesans as sisters. This was a deliberate psychological tool. By creating a surrogate family, the owners fostered loyalty and a sense of belonging, making the girls less likely to run away. On the surface, it's a support system. You will share meals, chores, and lessons. You will learn from each other, comfort each other during hard times, and celebrate small victories together. But underneath, this veneer of sisterhood is a brutal, unspoken competition. Everyone in this room is climbing the same slippery ladder. The ultimate prize is to become an Oyear-on, a top-ranking courtesan with the best clothes, the best food, and the best chance of attracting a wealthy patron to buy out your contract. Every scrap of praise from the Yarite, every nod of approval from the owner, every small favor is a point scored in a silent, relentless game. The girl who giggled at your name is named Kiku. She has a sharp, pretty face and watches you with an unnerving intensity. You sense immediately that she will be a problem. In this environment, friendships are currency, and rivalries are dangerous. A sister might teach you how to properly fold a kimono, but she might also forget to tell you about a change in schedule, leading to a punishment from the Yarite. She might share a sweet with you, but she might also start a rumor about you that damages your reputation before you've even built one. A little-known fact of this sisterhood is the formal ceremony of bonding. The Shinzo would often take a younger Keamuro under her wing in a ritual that mimicked marriage or blood pact, complete with exchanging cups of sake. This created a powerful senior-junior bond. Your senior sister, your Ainbun, would be your mentor and protector, and in return, you owed her absolute loyalty. However, these relationships could also be fraught with jealousy and control. To this day, historians debate whether these bonds were genuine sources of emotional support in a cruel world, or simply another mechanism of control, ensuring the house's traditions and power structures were passed down flawlessly from one generation of courtesans to the next. Hannah points to a small space in the corner of the room. "That is your sleeping place," she says, her voice flat. "Your things go in that box. We eat in 1 hour. Don't be late." You walk over to this spot. It's just a section of the tatami floor. At night, you'll be given a thin futon and a hard pillow filled with buckwheat husks. You share this large room with all the other girls. There is no privacy, not even a curtain to separate your space from the others. Your small bundle of belongings, the last remnants of your old life, looks pathetic next to the neatly stacked boxes of the other girls. You sit down, trying to make yourself as small as possible. The chatter in the room slowly resumes. But it's different now. It's peppered with whispers and sidelong glances in your direction. You are the new topic of conversation. Chico is staring at you openly, a small, cruel smile on her lips. You feel a profound sense of isolation, more intense than when you were alone in the cart. You are surrounded by people, but you have never felt more alone. You are one of them now, a strange and unwelcome sister in this twisted, artificial family. Your education begins not with books or ink, but with your body. The first, and perhaps most agonizing, lesson is how to walk. You are not just learning to walk. You are learning to perform. You are learning the hachimonji, the figure-8 walk, the signature gait of the oiran. The training starts at dawn, before the rest of the house is fully awake. Hira, your ain-san, takes you and a few other new girls to a small, enclosed courtyard at the back of the building. The ground is hard-packed earth. The air is cool and damp. Your only equipment is a pair of towering wooden sandals. The sun may be gere. These are not the simple gere you might have seen on merchants or townspeople. These are monstrous things. Each sandal is a solid block of lacquered wood, with 3 high teeth that lift you at least 8 inches off the ground. They are incredibly heavy, easily weighing several pounds each. Just putting them on feels like shackling your feet to blocks of wood. Hannah demonstrates the walk first. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace that seems to defy gravity. Her foot wings out in a wide, elegant arc, the gere tracing a perfect semispiral on the ground before landing softly. Then the other foot follows, creating an overlapping arc. The movement comes from the hip, a subtle, snake-like sway that makes her whole body seem to float above the ground. The pattern her feet leave in the dirt resembles the Japanese character for the number 8 ba, hence the name hachimonji. It is mesmerizing. It looks effortless. It is not. When it's your turn, you can barely stand. Your ankles wobble precariously. The weight of the get-ei is immense, and you feel every ounce of it in your calves and shins. You take one step, trying to imitate Hannah's sweeping motion. Your foot wings out wildly. The heavy sandal clatters loudly on the ground, and you immediately lose your balance, tumbling sideways onto the hard earth. Chico, the sharp-faced girl from your room, uttered a small, derisive laugh before Hannah shoots her a silencing glare. You scramble back up, your cheeks burning with shame. Your hip hurts from the fall. Again, Hannah says, her voice devoid of sympathy. Slower, feel the weight. It is part of you. You try again, and again, and again. Each attempt ends in a stumble. Uwada, purifua. Your ankles scream in protest. Your shins ache. The straps of the get-ei dig into the skin between your toes, rubbing it raw. Within an hour, you are sweating, exhausted, and covered in dirt. This brutal training is about more than just aesthetics. The figure-8 walk was a spectacle, a key part of the famous Oiran Ducho, the courtesan's procession through the main street of Yoshiwara. When a wealthy client booked the top-ranking Oiran, she would not simply go to him. She would parade to the tea house where he was waiting, accompanied by her entire entourage of Kai Amuro and Shinzo. This procession was street theater, a public display of Hearst Addison beauty. The slow, hypnotic hachimonji was designed to make her seem otherworldly, a celestial being gliding through a sea of mortals. It gave onlookers time to admire her kimono, her hair, and her face. It was an advertisement. And your painful steps are the very first lesson in how to be a walking billboard. One of the more peculiar and lesser-known aspects of this training involved balance exercises. A common, and rather cruel, method was to place small bowls of water on the girls' shoulders or heads as they practiced. Spilling the water meant starting over, or sometimes a sharp rap with a bamboo stick from the instructor. This was to train the upper body to remain perfectly still and graceful while the lower body performed the complex, swaying motion. For weeks, this is your reality. Every morning is a battle against the gade. Your feet are a mass of blisters on raw skin. Your ankles are permanently swollen. You limp through your other chores for the rest of the day. The muscles in your legs twitching with exhaustion. You fall asleep dreaming of falling. The psychological toll is just as heavy as the physical one. It is a process of breaking you down, of teaching you that your body is not your own. It is an instrument to be trained, shaped, and perfected for the viewing pleasure of others. Your pain is irrelevant. Your exhaustion is a sign of weakness. Historians today still discuss the true origin of this bizarre, impractical walk. Was it developed to intentionally slow the oer on down during processions, maximizing her public exposure? Or did it evolve from the need to navigate muddy streets in high heels while wearing restrictive, multi-layered kimonos weighing upwards of 40 pounds? There's no single, definitive answer. The walk is a mystery wrapped in silk, a symbol of both elegance and subjugation. One afternoon, after a particularly bad fall, you are sitting on the edge of the courtyard, blinking back tears of frustration and pain. Hannah walks over and stands beside you. She doesn't say anything for a long time. Then, she speaks, her voice softer than you've ever heard it. "Don't fight the shoe," she says quietly. "Let it lead you. Let its weight create the circle. Stop trying to walk. Start trying to draw." You look up at her, surprised. It's the first piece of genuine advice you've received. The first hint of something other than cold instruction. You look down at the monstrous wooden blocks on your feet. Let it lead you. The next morning, you try. You stop thinking about taking a step and start thinking about the arc. You focus on the feeling of the weight swinging outward. And for the first time, you manage 2, then 3 consecutive steps without falling. They are clumsy and ugly, but they are steps. It's a tiny victory, a flicker of light in a world of pain. But it's enough. You have survived another lesson. You have learned that in Yoshiwara, even the simple act of walking must be unlearned and relearned in the most painful way imaginable. Just as you start to gain some semblance of control over your feet, you are introduced to the next layer of your transformation, the clothes, and you learn very quickly that the stunning kimonos you saw on the women in the latticed rooms are not gifts. They are the first, and heaviest, links in the chain of debt that will bind you to this house for years, perhaps for life. The yara takes you and the other new girls to a storeroom. The air inside is dry and smells of camphor and old silk. Stacks of wooden chests line the walls, and hanging from racks are kimonos of every conceivable color and pattern. It's an intoxicating sight, a treasure trove of beauty. But this is not a wardrobe. It's an account book. The yara explains the system with chilling clarity. Every item you wear, from your innermost undergarments to the most extravagant outer robuchi cake, is a loan from the house. The cost of each item is recorded in a ledger next to your name, your food, your lodging, your lessons in dance and music, the cosmetics you will eventually use. Everything has a price. You have started your career with a debt so massive you can't even comprehend the number. Your purchase price was just the beginning. Now, the interest begins to accrue. You are first given the simple cotton robes of a kimono. They are brightly colored, usually red, and designed to make you look youthful and charming. But you are also fitted for your future. A tailor comes and takes your measurements, not for one kimono, but for dozens you will wear over the coming years as you hopefully ascend the ranks. You are allowed to handle one of the ohagoro's formal robes. The weight is shocking. An ohagoro's full regalia could weigh over 40 pounds or 20 kilograms. It's not just one layer, but multiple kimonos worn one on top of the other. A practice called juni haito, or 12 layers, though the actual number varied. Each layer is thick, heavy silk, intricately embroidered with gold and silver thread. Then, there is the obi, the wide sash tied around the waist. In Ohiran's obi, I was not tied in the back, as was standard for most women. It was tied in a large, elaborate bow at the front. This front tying obi is a key visual signifier of a courtesan. The official story was that it was a fashion statement, a bold deviation from the norm. The practical reality was much less glamorous. A front tying knot was easier to tie and tie multiple times a day by oneself. A respectable married woman's obi, tied in the back, often required a helper to get rightened, was only tied once in the morning. The front tying obi was a subtle, silent announcement of one's profession. Your first major debt comes from your matching kai amuro kimonos. As an attendant to a high-ranking koiran, you and another kai amuro would be her little sisters, and you had to be dressed identically. This created a pleasing, symmetrical look during processions. These matching outfits, paid for by the house, were immediately added to your partner's ledgers. You are being shackled to another girl not just by duty, but by a shared financial burden. A strange and often overlooked detail of this system was the burning of the bill at the end of the year during New Year's celebrations. A brothel might ceremonially burn the debt records of its most profitable courtesans. This was a grand gesture, a public display of the owner's generosity. However, historians argue about the truth of this practice. Was the entire debt truly forgiven, or was it just a symbolic burning of 1 year's interest? A psychological trick to give the women a sliver of hope and incentive to keep working. For most women, the numbers in the real, unburnt ledger kept in the owner's office just kept going up. This system of debt bondage, known as an enkiboko, was the engine that powered Yoshiwara. A girl was sold into a contract, typically for 10 years, but the debt was designed to be impossible to pay back. The exorbitant cost of kimonos, food, lodging, and fines for minor infractions meant that by the end of her 10-year contract, a woman often owed the house more than she did at the start. Her only option was to sign on for another term. The only way out was to have a wealthy patron, Adana, pay off the entire inflated debt in one lump sum, a rare occurrence that became the central myth and fantasy of Yoshiwara life. As you stand in the storeroom, holding a simple cotton robe, you feel the invisible weight of all the silk you have yet to wear. Tiko is nearby, stroking a bolt of expensive brocade with a greedy look in her eyes. She sees the clothes as a symbol of status, a prize to be won. But you are beginning to understand. The clothes are not a prize. They are the cage. The more beautiful the robe, the stronger the bars. That evening, back in the communal room, you see one of the older Shinzo crying silently into her futon. Hana is beside her, patting her back. You overhear whispers. The girl had been chosen to wear a particularly beautiful new kimono for a festival. In honor she was thrilled about. But then she saw the cost added to her ledger. The honor came with a price that would take her months, maybe years, to work off. The beautiful garment was a punishment in disguise. You look down at your own simple red robe. It feels heavier now. You fold it carefully, as you've been taught, smoothing out the cheap cotton. Every thread represents a number in a book, a number that defines your worth and dictates your future. You are not just wearing a uniform, you are wearing your own invoice. Your day begins long before the sun rises, not with a gentle awakening, but with the sharp clang of a small bell rung by the Urite. In the gray, pre-dawn chill, you and the other junior girls stumble out of your futons, folding them quickly and storing them away. The first task of the day is cleaning, and it starts with the morning ablutions. You follow the line of girls to a washing area, which is little more than a drafty, covered section of a veranda. Here, there are no private basins. Instead, a series of long wooden rafts are filled with cold water drawn from the house well. This is your sink. This is your bath. At least for the morning, you are given a small, rough tenuchi ui, a thin cotton towel that serves as your washcloth. Towel and handkerchief. You share this trough with 3 or 4 other girls. You dip your cloth into the frigid water, the shock of it making you gasp. You wash your face, your hands, your neck. The water is clean at the start of the line, but by the time it reaches the girls at the end, it's gray and cloudy with the grime of those who have washed before. There is no soap. Soap was a luxury, reserved for the higher-ranking courtesans, and even then, it was used sparingly. Your cleaning agent is the friction of the rough cloth against your skin. You scrub until your skin is pink and raw, not because you are trying to be clean, but because the Yarite inspects your hands and face. Any sign of dirt earns you a sharp rebuke or a smack. Hygiene in this world is a performance, not a reality. The goal is not to be sterile. It is to appear clean from a distance. The shared water, the communal cloths, the lack of soap, it's a perfect environment for transmitting skin diseases, eye infections, and all manner of ailments. A small cut on your foot from your get-a practice could easily become infected in this environment. But illness is a liability the house cannot afford, so you learn to ignore minor discomforts and hide any sign of sickness for as long as possible. After washing, you are handed a small bowl of salt water. This is your morning mouthwash. You swish the brine around in your mouth, the salt stinging the rough spots on your gums. Then you spit it out onto the dirt ground. For brushing your teeth, you are given a small willow twig. It's unfrayed into a primitive brush. You scrub your teeth with this. No powder, no paste. It's more about the mechanical action of removing food particles than any real cleaning. This morning ritual is a lesson in communal living and the complete absence of personal comfort. Everything is shared. Everything is public. Everything is cold. The concept of personal hygiene as you might know it doesn't exist. It is house hygiene, a system designed for maximum efficiency and minimum cost. A particularly strange and little-known aspect of morning hygiene involved the use of NUKA, or rice bran. The fine, powdery bran left over from polishing rice was a prized beauty product. It was placed in small cloth bags, which were then soaked in water and used to scrub the face and body. The bran acted as a gentle exfoliant and released oils that soften the skin, while the top courtesans might have their own personal NUKA bags. For junior girls like you, even this was a shared commodity. The same bag used by multiple people. Its cleansing properties diminishing with each use. Historians often point to the Edo period as a time when cleanliness became more widespread in Japan, with the popularity of public bathhouses sen too. However, the reality within a closed, hierarchical institution like a brothel was very different. While the appearance of cleanliness was paramount, the actual means were often primitive and unsanitary by modern standards. There's a constant debate about how aware people were of contagion. Did they understand that sharing water could spread disease? Or was illness simply attributed to bad luck or humoral imbalance? The evidence suggests a growing, but incomplete, understanding of how sickness spread. Once you are deemed clean, your chores begin. You sweep the long wooden corridors, your movements synchronized with the other girls. You learn to do it without raising dust, a skill in itself. You polish the wood until it gleams, using a damp cloth and sheer elbow grease. You help in the kitchen, washing rice and chopping vegetables for the house meals. You are a maid, a servant, a cog in the machine that keeps this grand, decaying house running. By the time the first clients of the day begin to arrive at the tea houses, you are already weary. But your most important work, the work on yourself, is about to begin. The cleaning of the house is over. Now, the construction of your public face will start, and that construction begins with one of the most iconic and, up-close, unsettling practices of all, the blackening of your teeth. The basin of cold water was just a prelude. The real filth, you will soon learn, is something you apply to yourself willingly. You don't have to undergo the process yourself. Not yet. This ritual is reserved for women who are officially courtesans. Unmarried women, as a Kayamuro, your job is to assist and to learn. One day, this will be your ritual. 2. The thought fills you with a nauseous dread. Hyuna, your Ain-san, is preparing for her day. She has already washed and is now sitting before a small, low mirror stand of polished wood. You and another girl kneel silently beside her, acting as her assistants. Your task is to prepare the ohaguro, The tooth blackening dye. The ingredients are laid out on a small tray. The primary component is a dark, foul-smelling liquid called kanmiza, which translates to iron water. It's made by dissolving scraps of iron old nails, filings, anything available in vinegar. This mixture has been sitting for days, maybe weeks, in a ceramic pot in a dark corner of the kitchen. When you open the lid, a putrid, metallic stench fills the air. It smells like rust and sour wine. The liquid itself is a murky, reddish brown. This iron vinegar solution alone is not enough to make the dye permanent and to give it a lustrous, lacquer-like finish. It must be mixed with a tannin. This usually comes from gall nuts, but a more common and readily available source is tea powder. You take a small amount of the kanmiza and mix it with the dark tea powder in a small ceramic bowl. The chemical reaction is immediate. The mixture turns a deep, viscous black and releases another wave of acrid, unpleasant odor. Hannah takes the bowl. She picks up a special brush made of bamboo fibers. She leans in close to the mirror, opens her mouth, and begins to paint the foul-smelling concoction onto her teeth. One by one, she does this with a practiced, steady hand, her face a mask of concentration. The goal is to apply a perfectly even, opaque coat, covering every bit of the white enamel. The smell is so strong you have to fight the urge to gag. This practice, the ohaguro, is shocking to a modern eye, but in Edo-period Japan, it was considered the height of beauty and sophistication. Gleaming white teeth were seen as garish. Even animalistic, black teeth, by contrast, were a sign of civilization, maturity, and sexual allure. The color was thought to beautifully contrast with the white makeup of the face, making the woman's smile more subtle and mysterious. It also signified that a woman was sexually mature. For a courtesan, black teeth were as essential as her kimono and her elaborate hairstyle. However, the reality of the process was disgusting. The dye tasted as bad as it smelled bitter, metallic, and sour. It had to be applied daily, or every few days, to maintain the deep black color, as it would fade to a reddish brown. If applied improperly, it could stain the gums and lips. Imagine starting every single day by painting your teeth with a foul-tasting slurry of rust and vinegar. It was a daily ritual of self-inflicted revulsion for the sake of beauty. A weirdly practical, and lesser known, defect of ohaguro is that it actually helped prevent its decay. The iron solution created a protective coating over the enamel, and some historians argue that this dental benefit is one reason the practice persisted for centuries. While the women themselves may not have understood the chemistry, they likely noticed that those who practiced ohaguro diligently suffered from fewer toothaches. It's a strange irony. A practice that seems so unhygienic on the surface may have had a genuine hygienic benefit. It's a topic still debated among dental historians and anthropologists. Was it primarily cosmetic, or was its dental health aspect a key reason for its popularity? You watch Hannah finish, her lips pursed to avoid smudging the fresh dye. She keeps her mouth slightly open for a few minutes, allowing the dye to dry. When she is done, she turns her head slightly and gives a small, practiced smile in the mirror. Her teeth have vanished into a black void against the white paint she is about to apply. Her smile is no longer about teeth. It is about the shape of her lips, a silent, dark blossom in a field of white. You are responsible for cleaning the bowl and the brush. The black stain is tenacious, clinging to the ceramic and the bamboo fibers. It gets under your fingernails. The metallic, vinegary smell clings to your hands for the rest of the morning. A constant, nauseating reminder of the ritual. Later that day, Yoshiwara, your rival, practicing smiling in a reflection from a polished pillar. She is holding her lips in a way that hides her teeth, trying to emulate the look of the older courtesans. She is eager for the day she will earn the right to blacken her own teeth, seeing it as a badge of honor, a step up the ladder. You, however, feel a profound sense of unease. You look at your own teeth in a sliver of reflection. They are white, healthy. The idea of deliberately coating them in that stinking black paint feels like a violation. Another piece of yourself you will have to defile and cover up. It's not just about changing your color. It's about erasing a feature, creating a beautiful void where a human one used to be. It's one more step in the process of becoming a living work of art, and one less step of being a person. Once the teeth are uniform, lustrous black, the next stage of creating the mask begins, the application of the white face. This isn't just a bit of powder to even out the skin tone. This is the deliberate creation of a flawless, artificial canvas, erasing every blemish, every freckle, and every trace of natural human complexion. Again, you are an assistant, a silent observer kneeling beside the senior courtesan. The process is a ritual, slow and methodical. The main product is a white powder called Oshiro-ai. In this era, the most prized, and therefore most expensive and high status, Oshiro-ai was made with a lead base. The women of Yoshiwara knew it was dangerous. The side effects of lead poisoning were observable in the older courtesans who had used it for years, but its superior coverage and bright, pearlescent finish made it irresistible. It was a slow-acting poison that they willingly painted on their faces every single day. The powder is mixed with water in a small bowl to create a paste. The consistency has to be just right. Too thick and it will crack. Too thin and it will be translucent. The courtesan then uses a flat brush to apply the paste to her face, her neck, her upper chest, and her hands. Every visible inch of skin must be covered. She is literally painting herself a new skin, a perfect porcelain shell. You watch as the woman's natural face disappears. Her expressions become muted under the thick layer of white. The paste fills in small lines, covers pores, and creates a smooth, dough-like surface. It is deeply unsettling to watch a living, breathing person transform into an inanimate object before your eyes. But the application is not a simple, uniform coating. There is an art to it, an art full of subtle signals, a key part of the technique, and one of the most alluring for the clientele was what was left unpainted. At the nape of the neck, the courtesan would carefully paint the Oshiro-ai to leave 2 or 3 unpainted prongs of skin showing. The pattern called deer eye is high. This small, tantalizing glimpse of a woman's natural skin, framed by the stark white makeup in the hairline, was considered incredibly sensual and intimate. It was a deliberate flaw in the perfection, a hint of the real person beneath the mask, and it drove patrons wild. It was a calculated vulnerability. After the white base is dry, the details are painted on. Eyebrows that were shaved off are carefully redrawn. High on the forehead, with charcoal, the corners of the eyes and the lips are outlined in red, made from safflower pigment beni. The lower lip is oft unpainted much smaller than its natural shape, creating a tiny, bud-like mouth. The amount and placement of the red were also coated. A younger, junior courtesan might wear more red on her lips, while a more senior, sophisticated oiran would wear less, a sign of her refined status. A strange and little-known fact about this makeup is the sheer, physical discomfort it caused. The lead-based powder was heavy and suffocating. It would dry and tighten on the skin, making it difficult to make any extreme facial expressions without cracking the mask. In the summer heat, sweating underneath, it was a nightmare. The sweat could cause the makeup to run, creating grotesque streaks. More than one historian has noted that courtesans were trained to control their expressions, and even their sweat glands through sheer force of will to maintain their perfect facade throughout a long evening. There is a constant academic discussion about the psychological impact of wearing this mask every day. Did it help women compartmentalize, to separate their work self from their real self? Or did the mask eventually devour the face beneath, leaving the woman with a lost sense of her own identity? Did she eventually only recognize the painted face in the mirror as her true self? As you help clean the brushes and bowls, you can't help but notice the older your eyed who manages the house. Her skin has a grayish, unhealthy pallor. She has a persistent tremor in her hands. You see the long-term effects of the lead right in front of you. It's a preview of your own potential future. The pursuit of this ethereal, white-faced beauty was a deal with the devil, trading long-term health for short-term professional success. That night, you lie on your futon, The image of the white face burned into your mind. You touch your own cheek, feeling the soft, warm skin. You think about covering it with that cold, heavy paste. You think about the your eye is high, the calculated display of your own flesh as a decoration. It's another part of the performance, another way your body is being dissected and presented piece by piece. First your walk, then your teeth, now your skin. Each day, a little more of you is erased, painted over with a beautiful, toxic lie. And the most terrifying part is that everyone here, including you, is expected to be a willing participant in their own slow poisoning. If the white face is the canvas and the kimono is the frame, then the hair is the grand, ornate sculpture that crowns the entire masterpiece. And like everything else in Yoshiwara, it is a marvel of artifice, discomfort, and hidden meaning. You soon learn that the towering, elaborate hairstyles of the on are not something that can be done and undone each day. The process is far too complex, time-consuming, and expensive. Instead, a courtesan's hair was styled once a week, or even less frequently, by a professional hairdresser from outside the house. This meant she had to sleep, work, and live with this massive, precarious structure on her head for days on end. The style itself is a variation of the Hyogo Mage, a large, fan-shaped Hygiene on, but the Ohiron version is exaggerated to an extreme degree. It's known as the date Hyogo to achieve the necessary volume and shape. A huge amount of false hair extensions and pads made from human hair is integrated with the woman's own. The entire structure is then stiffened with a thick, sticky wax called Benties Yukari, Edo-period, the same wax used by sumo wrestlers. This wax holds every strand in place, but it also makes the hair greasy, heavy helmet. The finished coiffurau is then decorated with an arsenal of ornaments. These aren't just pretty accessories, they are indicators of rank. The sheer number and expense of the hairpins, kanzashi, combs, couche, and other trinkets broadcasted a courtesan's status to the world. There were long, dangling birabira kanzashi that tinkled with every movement, large, fan-shaped kogai pins, in multiple tortoisile combs. A top-ranking Hoiran might wear as many as 20 or more of these ornaments, their combined weight adding significantly to the already heavy hairstyle. The entire arrangement could weigh several pounds. Your first job related to hair is simply to watch and learn to identify the different ornaments. You must know them by name and be able to hand them to a senior courtesan in the correct order. The most important lesson, however, is how to sleep. To preserve the hairstyle, a woman could not sleep on a normal pillow. Instead, she used a takamakuka, or tall pillow. This was not a pillow in the soft, comfortable sense. It was a lacquered, wooden or ceramic stand with a small, padded roll on top. The woman would lie on her back and rest the nape of her neck on this tiny roll, keeping her head in the elaborate hairstyle completely elevated and untouched. Hannah shows you how it's done. It looks incredibly uncomfortable, like sleeping in a neck brace. You are given a takamakuka to practice with, even though your own hair is still simple. The first night you try it, you can't sleep at all. The hard stand digs into your neck. You instinctively want to turn onto your side, but you can't. You wake up every few minutes, your neck stiff and aching. In the morning, you feel more tired than when you went to bed. This method of sleeping was a form of constant, low-level torture. It ensured the hairstyle remained perfect, but it denied the women the simple, restorative comfort of a good night's sleep. Neck pain, headaches, and chronic sleep deprivation were just part of the job description. Edas aren't rather grim. Little known fact about this practice concerns what would happen if a woman did toss and turn in her sleep, ruining her hair. If a Amuro or Shinzo in training repeatedly failed to sleep correctly on the takamakuka, a cruel solution was sometimes employed. Rice or bran would be sprinkled on the floor all around the base of her pillow stand. If she moved her head off the stand during the night, her ruined, waxy hair would be covered in rice, a clear and humiliating sign of her failure to the entire house. In the morning, it was a powerful incentive to learn to sleep like a statue. The debate among historians here revolves around the symbolism of the hairstyle itself. Was the sheer size and weight of the date Hugo style meant to be a form of physical restraint, making it difficult for a woman to move her head quickly, thus forcing her into slow, graceful, feminine movements? Or was it purely a product of escalating fashion trends within the closed world of Yoshiwara, a kind of arms race of beauty where bigger always meant better? The truth is likely a combination of both. You look at the senior courtesans, gliding through the hallways with their magnificent, burdensome heads held high. You see the faint lines of fatigue around their eyes, even through the thick white makeup. You see the subtle way they rub their necks when they think no one is watching. The hairstyle is a crown, yes, but it's also a yoke. It's a symbol of their high status, but it's also a constant, heavy reminder of their bondage. It deprives them of comfort, of rest, of the simple freedom to lay their head down on a soft pillow at the end of a long day. As you lie on your futon, your own neck aching from the practice below, you realize another piece of the puzzle. The walk controls your legs, the makeup controls your face, the kimono restricts your body, and the hair controls your very sleep. Every part of your physical existence is being meticulously managed, reshaped, and constrained. You are being rebuilt, piece by painful piece, into something beautiful, profitable, and profoundly unfree, with your body reshaped by the walk, your face hidden behind a mask, and your head burdened by a waxed sculpture. The final layer of artifice is applied, the scent. In a world where true cleanliness is a luxury, the art of olfaction becomes paramount. You don't just learn to mask unpleasant odors. You learn to construct a complex and alluring aromatic identity. The house, especially in the cramped living quarters, has a permanent underlying smell. It's a mixture of old wood, tatami, stale cooking oil, unwashed bodies, and the faint, ever-present medicinal scent of various herbal remedies. In the summer, the humidity traps these smells, making them thick and suffocating. In the winter, the closed-off rooms concentrate them. To combat this, and to create an atmosphere of luxury for the clients, the house burns incense constantly. As a K-Emerald, one of your daily chores is to manage the incense burners. You learn to light the charcoal briquettes, bury them in beds of fine white ash, and place small pieces of aromatic wood or resin on top. The most prized incense is Jinko, or aloes wood, which releases a deep, complex, and incredibly expensive scent when heated. You learn that using too much is just as bad as using too little. The goal is a subtle, almost unabateable fragrance that permeates the very wooden paper of the building, creating an environment that feels serene and otherworldly. But the environmental scent is only the beginning. The courtesans themselves must be perfumed. This is not done with liquid perfume applied to the skin. Instead, the scent is infused into their clothing. The primary method for this was takamona, a technique of de-ensing the garments. Hannah shows you the process. A large, ornate incense burner is lit. A wooden or bamboo frame, shaped like a headless mannequin, is placed over it. A courtesan's multiple layers of kimono are then draped over the frame. The fragrant smoke from the incense below slowly rises, permeating every fiber of the heavy silk. The robes are left on the frame for hours, absorbing the rich, smoky scent of aloes wood, sandalwood, and clove. When a woman wears these scented garments, the scent is released slowly by her body heat, surrounding her in a personal cloud of fragrance. You also learn to make small sackets, or enai, ohaguro, filled with a blend of fragrant powders, chopped woods, and herbs. These are tucked into the sleeves or folds of the kimono. They serve as a kind of personal air freshener, releasing a pleasant scent with every movement. This obsession with scent was not just about covering up the reality of infrequent bathing. It was a crucial part of a courtesan's brand. Each high-ranking O-Iron would have her own signature blend of incense, a unique scent that her clients would come to associate only with her. It was an invisible calling card. A client might catch a whiff of a specific incense blend on the street and be immediately reminded of his favorite courtesan, creating a powerful sense of longing and desire. A lesser known and rather intimate detail of this scent culture involved a game called Kodo, or the Way of Incense. This was a sophisticated parlor game played by courtesans and their wealthy patrons. Participants would be given several different types of incense to smell. They would then be given a sample to sniff blind and have to identify it, or note its similarities and differences to the others. It was like a wine tasting for the nose. Being skilled at Kodo was another mark of a refined and cultured courtesan. It elevated the sense of smell to a high art, turning a basic biological function into a form of intellectual and aesthetic entertainment. The historical debate around this topic is about interpretation. Were these elaborate scent rituals a desperate attempt to mask the filth of the profession, a fragrant lie to cover a squalid truth? Or were they a genuine expression of a highly developed aesthetic culture, where scent was appreciated for its own sake, much like music or calligraphy? The answer, as with most things in Yoshiwara, is that it was both. It was a practical solution to a hygiene problem, elevated into a sophisticated art form that added to the mystique and marketability of the courtesan. One evening, you are helping to fold the freshly sensed robes of a Tapo Iran. The silk is still warm from the incense burner. The scent is intoxicating, a rich blend of wood, spice, and something sweet and floral. It smells of wealth, of luxury, of a world far removed from the cold water troughs and digging ankles of your own reality. But then, as you lean in close, you catch another scent, faint and sharp, underneath the cloud of perfume. It's the metallic, vinegary smell of the ohaguro dye. And beneath that, an even fainter, vaguely medicinal odor you can't quite place. You realize the beautiful fragrance isn't just an enhancement. It's a thick, expensive blanket thrown over a pile of less pleasant realities. You look at the magnificent robe in your hands. It is a lie you can see. The white makeup is a lie you can touch. And the perfume is a lie you can breathe. You are learning that to be a courtesan is to be a master of illusion, a weaver of sensory deceptions. Your job is not to be clean, beautiful, and elegant. Your job is to smell clean, look beautiful, and act elegant. The gap between the reality and the performance is where you will live your life. And that gap is filled with the sweet, cloying smoke of incense. In a world where every action is calibrated for status, even the act of eating is governed by a rigid and unforgiving hierarchy. The food you receive is a direct reflection of your current standing within the house, a daily, tangible measure of your worth. As a KMRO, you are at the absolute bottom of the food chain. Meals are a communal affair, taken in the same large room where you sleep. You and the other junior girls line up, and the kitchen staff ladle your portions into simple, rough ceramic bowls. Your meal is almost always the same. A large portion of steamed rice, a thin, watery soup with a few slivers of vegetables, and a small dish of pickled radishes. The rice is the main event. It's meant to fill your stomach and give you energy for your long day of chores and training. The soup and pickles are just there to provide a little flavor. Meat is a rarity you might see once or twice a month, and fish is usually just the leftover heads and bones used to flavor the soup stock. You eat quickly, sitting in a neat row on the tatami floor. There is no lingering, no idle chatter. Mealtime is for refueling, not for pleasure. You learn to be grateful for the food, meager as it is. It's better than the hunger you knew before you came here. But you also learn to watch. You watch the shinzo, the courtesans in training, eat their meal. They eat after the kai amuro, and their food is slightly better. Their soup might have a few more vegetables or a piece of tofu. They might get a small portion of a stewed root vegetable. The difference is subtle, but it's there. It's a reminder of their higher status, an incentive for you to work harder. Then, there's the food of the ranking courtesans. They do not eat with the rest of the house. Their meals are served to them in their own private or semi-private quarters, on beautiful lacquered trays with delicate porcelain bowls. You catch glimpses of these meals when you are tasked with delivering or clearing them. You see grilled fish, glistening with sauce. You see artfully arranged dishes of seasonal vegetables. You see pristine white rice in a lacquered bowl, not the slightly gray, over-steamed rice you get. You see small, sweet cakes for dessert, The quality of a courtesan's meal can even depend on her performance the previous night. A woman who had a particularly wealthy and generous client might be rewarded with a more luxurious meal the next day. A woman who failed to please a client, or who had no booking at all, might find her meal reduced to the same level as the shinzo. Food is a tool of reward and punishment, a constant, visceral reminder of the transactional nature of your existence. This system creates a powerful sense of food-related desire and competition. You dream of the day you will be able to eat grilled fish. The other girls talk about it in hushed, reverent tones. Chico, your idol, often boasts about how she will eat sweet cakes every day when she becomes a courtesan. This longing for better food is a powerful motivator, perhaps more so than the desire for beautiful kimonos or hairpins. It's a primal, gut-level ambition. A little-known and rather sad detail of the food system in Yoshiwara concerned kitchen maids. Sometimes, a girl who was brought to a brothel was deemed not pretty enough, or not graceful enough, to be trained as a courtesan. Instead of being sent away, she would be relegated to a life of drudgery in the kitchens. These girls were at the absolute bottom of the house's social structure. They worked from before dawn until late at night, cooking the luxurious meals for the courtesans that they themselves would never get to eat. Their own meals were often just the scraps and leftovers from the house's preparations. They were a constant, silent reminder to girls like you of what failure looked like. The historical debate here centers on nutrition, while the diet of the junior girls was monotonous. Was it nutritionally adequate? Some historians argue that the rice-heavy diet, while lacking in variety, provided enough calories for the girls' demanding physical schedules. Others contend that the lack of protein, vitamins, and minerals likely led to chronic health problems, such as anemia and beriberi, which would have been misdiagnosed or simply seen as a woman's natural weakness. The beautiful, porcelain-kind courtesans may have been suffering from severe malnutrition. One afternoon, you are cleaning the corridor outside the room of a high-ranking ohaguro. The door is slightly ajar. She has just finished her midday meal. You can see the lacquered tray sitting on the floor. On one of the small, exquisite plates is a single, perfect strawberry, a rare and incredibly expensive treat. The ohaguro is sitting by the window, looking out at nothing. She hasn't touched the strawberry. A few moments later, she calls for an attendant to clear the tray. You watch as the tray, with the untouched strawberry still on it, is carried away. It will be thrown out. The sight fills you with a confusing mix of anger and longing. You, who would have savored that single piece of fruit like the greatest treasure on earth, can only watch as it's discarded without a thought. You learn a bitter lesson. Getting the good food isn't the same as enjoying it. For the woman in that room, the luxury had become mundane. Perhaps she had no appetite. Perhaps she was worried about her weight. Perhaps she was just tired. You realize that climbing the ladder doesn't just mean better food. It means entering a world of different anxieties and pressures. The hunger you feel in your stomach might one day be replaced by a different kind of hunger. A hunger of the soul that no delicacy can satisfy. But for now, as you return to your chores, the image of that perfect, wasted strawberry is all you can think about. While your morning wash is a quick, cold, and functional affair, the evening bath is a different ritual altogether. It is a time for soaking, for socializing, and for confronting one of the greatest hygiene risks in the house, the communal bath. The house has its own large bathroom, a steamy, resonant chamber with dark, water-stained wooden walls and floors. In the center is a large, deep wooden tub, big enough to hold 6 or 7 women at once. The water is heated by a stove in an adjoining room, keeping the bath at a near scalding temperature. For a body aching from a day of chores and training, the promise of that heat is an incredible lure. But you quickly learn that this luxury comes with a catch. The water in this massive tub is not changed for each bather. In fact, it might not be changed all day. The hierarchy of the house dictates the bathing order. The highest-ranking ower on bathe first, when the water is pristine and clean. They are attended by their kai-emerald, who scrub their backs and wash their hair. It is a leisurely, luxurious experience. After them come the lower-ranking courtesans, then the Shinzo like Hana, By the time it's the turn of the Kayamuro, late in the evening, the bath is a different entity. The water is no longer clear. It's a murky, cloudy soup, filled with floating debris, stray hairs, flakes of skin, and who knows what else. The clean, woody scent of the hot water has been replaced by a commingled smell of dozens of bodies. The heat is still welcoming, but the water itself is visibly used. You are taught the proper bathing etiquette. You do not just jump into the tub. First, you must wash yourself thoroughly outside the tub. You sit on a small wooden stool, taking a bucket of the hot bath water and pouring it over yourself. You scrub your body with your roughed NOGUI cloth. Only after you are considered clean are you allowed to enter the tub for a final soak. This pre-washing is meant to keep the main tub water cleaner for longer, but with dozens of women using it, the effect is minimal. As you sit in the murky water, shoulder to shoulder with Kiko and the other girls, you try not to think about it too much. You try to focus on the way the heat soothes your aching leg muscles, but it's impossible to ignore. You see a small skin rash on the arm of the girl next to you. You remember the way one of the senior courtesans was coughing a few days ago. Every ailment, every germ, is potentially shared in this water. This was the great paradox of Japanese bathing culture in this period. While bathing was extremely common and valued, the understanding of germ theory was non-existent. A bath was for relaxation, for ritual purification, and for getting visibly clean, not for sterilization. The hot water was thought to be inherently healthy, regardless of what was floating in it, for the women of Yoshiwara, whose entire livelihood depended on their physical health and unblemished skin. This communal bath was a daily game of Russian roulette. A minor skin infection could prevent a woman from working, costing her and the house money. A more serious disease contracted in the bath could end her career. A strange and lesser-known detail about these baths concerned the bathish manager, or Yuban. This was often a male servant whose job was to maintain the fire for the bathwater. But in some of the larger establishments, he also acted as an enforcer of bathish etiquette, and sometimes the guard, because the bathroom was one of the few places with a non-wooden floor and a drain. It was sometimes used for punishing girls, such as forcing them to kneel on the hard, wet floor for hours. The place that was supposed to be for relaxation could also become a place of punishment. The historical debate on this topic focuses on the prevalence of disease. How bad was it really? Some accounts from the period describe rampant skin diseases, lice, and other infections within the pleasure quarters. Yet, the ideal of the Oiran was one of flawless, porcelain skin. This suggests a massive discrepancy between the ideal and the reality. Historians argue about how much of this was managed through cosmetics covering up blemishes versus quarantine hiding sick girls away until they recovered. It's likely a combination of both, a constant, desperate battle to maintain the illusion of perfect health in a deeply unhealthy environment. As you get out of the tub, your skin red from the heat, you feel a mixture of relief and anxiety. The warmth has eased your physical pain, but your mind is uneasy. You dry yourself with your thin, damp towel and put on your simple sleeping robe. Later, as you lie on your futon, you feel a small itch on your leg. Is it just a dry patch of skin, or is it the beginning of something worse? You scratch it, and then force yourself to stop. To show any sign of sickness is to show weakness. You learn to live with a new kind of awareness of your own body, a constant, low-level paranoia about every little itch, rash, or cut. The communal bath, which should be a symbol of shared rest and sisterhood, becomes another source of anxiety. It is a warm, cloudy, and dangerous soup, and you are forced to swim in it every single night. The physical discomforts of your new life, the aching ankles, the foul-tasting dye, the restrictive clothing are immense, but you soon discover there is a more insidious, more pervasive hardship. The complete and utter annihilation of privacy. From the moment you wake to the moment you fall into a fitful sleep on your takamakuka, you are never truly alone. Your life is a public performance, and the audience is not just the clients, but the ever-present staff and sisters of the house. You sleep in a large communal room. Your foot and just inches away from the others. Your hushed late-night conversations are overheard. Your restless turning is noted. Your quiet crying into your pillow is not a secret. When you wake, you wash at a communal trough. Your morning ablutions visible to all. You eat your meals under the watchful eye of the other girls. Your every bite and expression scrutinized. Your lessons, whether in dance, music, or calligraphy, or group activities, your mistakes are public. Your small triumphs witnessed and judged by your peers. When you practice the agonizing hachimonji walk, the Yar-ite watches, Anna watches, and the other girls watch, some with sympathy, others with a smug sense of superiority. There is no space to fail in private, to be clumsy or awkward without an audience. Even your body is not your own to observe. The Yar-ite conducts regular inspections, checking your hands for dirt, your skin for blemishes, your hair for lice. This is done in a brisk, impersonal manner, but it is a violation nonetheless. You are an asset, a piece of property, and your condition is a matter of business for the house. Your physical being is subject to audit at any time. The architecture of the house itself is designed to eliminate privacy. The walls are thin paper screens, or shoti. Sound travels easily. A raised voice, the sob, a shard of broken pottery, nothing goes unnoticed. There are no locks on any of the doors. The Yar-ite or the housemaster can, and will, slide open the door to your room at any time. Without warning, you learn to live with the constant possibility of interruption. This lack of privacy extends to the most intimate moments of a courtesan's life. When a ranking you're on is with a client in a tea house, they are not truly alone. Like a amro, like you might be expected to stay in an adjacent room, ready to serve tea or fetch a musical instrument at a moment's notice. You are trained to be invisible, to not hear what you are not supposed to hear, but you are there. Your presence is a reminder that even in the act of supposed intimacy, the business of the house is ever present. One of the most extreme and lesser-known examples of this surveillance was the viewing closet. In some high-end establishments, the rooms where a courtesan entertained her most important clients were designed with hidden closets or panels. From here, the brothel owner or a trusted manager could secretly observe the interaction. This wasn't for salacious reasons, but for business. They were assessing their product's performance. Was the courtesan using the right honorificus? Was she keeping the client entertained? Was she encouraging him to order more expensive steak? It was the ultimate form of quality control, and the ultimate betrayal of trust. Historians and sociologists have long debated the psychological effects of such a total lack of privacy. Does it foster a sense of community and shared experience, or does it breed paranoia and mistrust? The evidence from diaries and fictional accounts of the time suggests it was overwhelmingly the latter. When you know you are always being watched, you learn to constantly self-censor. You wear a mask not just on your face, but on your emotions. You never show your true feelings: anger, sadness, even genuine joy, because any authentic emotion can be misinterpreted and used against you. One afternoon, you find a small, forgotten storage space under a staircase. It's no bigger than a closet, dusty and filled with old, broken baskets, but it is quiet. Then no one is there. For a few precious minutes, you sit in the darkness, breathing in the smell of dust and old wood. You are not practicing, not serving, not being watched. You are just being. The sense of relief is so profound it almost makes you cry. It is the first time you have been truly alone since you arrived. The moment is shattered when you hear Ikaya's voice calling your name, an irritated edge to her tone. You have been missed. Your absence has been noted. You quickly crawl out of the small space, brushing the dust from your robe. Where were you? Keiko demands, her hands on her hips. Hana is looking for you. Yori supposed to be polishing the handrails. You murmur an apology and scurry off to your task. But the memory of those few minutes of solitude stays with you. It becomes a secret treasure. You realize that the greatest luxury in this glittering, gilded cage is not the silk kimonos or the sweet cakes. It is the simple, priceless commodity of a locked door. It is a luxury you will likely never have. Your life is a stage, and you are never allowed to exit. You are young, and for now, your body is resilient. It endures the grueling training and the questionable hygiene with the remarkable fortitude of youth. But you are surrounded by illness. It is a constant, silent character in the drama of the house, a shadow that looms over every woman. Regardless of her rank, you learn to read the subtle signs of sickness in your sisters. You see the girl who always seems to have a lingering cough, which she tries to stifle in her sleeve. You notice the Shinzo who moves a little more slowly than she used to. Her smile's not quite reaching her eyes, a sign of a deep, internal weariness. You see the faint, discolored patches on a woman's skin, hastily covered with a thick layer of ohaguro before she presents herself for the evening. These are the common illnesses: consumption, chronic fatigue, skin ailments. They are spoken of in whispers. If at all, to be openly sick is to be a liability. A sick girl cannot work, cannot earn. She becomes a drain on the house's resources. So, the women learn to hide their symptoms, to push through the pain and fever, to maintain the illusion of perfect health for as long as humanly possible. But there is another category of illness, the one that is never spoken of, but is on everyone's mind, the kaisayoma, or Courtesan's disease. This was the catch-all term for the host of venereal diseases that were rampant in the pleasure quarters. Syphilis, in particular, was a terrifying specter that haunted Yoshiwara. You don't understand the mechanics of it, not in a clinical sense, but you see its effects. You see a beautiful courtesan who was once the talk of the district suddenly disappear from the front rooms. You might see her weeks later, assigned to menial chores in the laundry, her face gaunt, her walk unsteady. You overhear the older women talking in hushed, fearful tones about the plum blossom sores so, a poetic euphemism for the devastating skin lesions that were a symptom of advanced syphilis. The fear of these diseases is palpable. It underlies every interaction, every forced smile. The women know that their profession puts them at extreme risk, but they have no power to refuse a client, even one who is visibly unwell. Their bodies are not their own, and they must bear the consequences of the risks they are forced to take. A particularly cruel and little-known aspect of this was the quarantine system. When a woman's symptoms became too obvious to hide, she would be removed from public view. She wasn't sent to a hospital. There were none for women like her. She would be confined to a small, isolated room in a less desirable part of the house, or sometimes sent to a separate, run-down building owned by the brothel. Here, she would be cared for by the lowest-ranking servants, her meals basic, her existence all but erased. The goal was not to cure her, but to keep her out of sight, to prevent her from damaging the house's reputation and infecting other assets. Her sisters were forbidden from visiting her, to prevent the spread of disease, but also to prevent the spread of fear and low morale. The historical debate here is a grim one. What percentage of courtesans were afflicted due to the lack of proper medical records and the stigma of the diseases? It's impossible to know for sure. Some scholars, extrapolating from anecdotal evidence and period literature, suggest the numbers were staggeringly high, with a majority of women contracting a serious venereal disease at some point in their careers. Others argue these estimates might be inflated by moralizing tracts of the time that sought to portray the pleasure quarters as a pit of pestilence. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, but there is no doubt that the risk was constant and the consequences catastrophic. One day, you are tasked with taking a food tray to a sealed room at the far end of a dusty, unused corridor. Hannah gives you the instructions, her face grim. Leave it outside the door and knock 3 times. She says, do not wait for an answer. Do not try to look inside. You do as you're told. The corridor is silent and cold as you place the simple tray of rice and soup on the floor. You can hear a faint, red coughing from behind the paper screen. It's a wet, painful sound. You knock 3 times, your knuckles making a hollow sound on the wooden frame. As you turn to leave, you hear a weak voice from inside. It's a voice you recognize. It belongs to a young Shinzo you admired, a girl known for her beautiful singing voice and her quick wit. You hadn't seen her in over a week. You hesitate for a moment, Hannah's warning ringing in your ears, but you can't help it. You glance back at the door. Through the thin paper, you can see a small, dark stain near the bottom, as if something had been spilled and left to dry. The sight fills you with a cold, visceral fear. You hurry away, the sound of the coffee going in your head. You have just delivered a meal to a ghost. You have seen the reality of what happens when the illusion of health shatters. The silent diseases of Yoshiwara are not just a risk. They are a probable outcome, and the cure you are about to discover is often a horror worse than the disease itself. The cough from behind the sealed door is the sound of the disease. The response from the house is the sound of the cure, and it is a terrifying one, with no understanding of bacteria or viruses. The treatments for syphilis and other venereal diseases were a horrifying blend of superstition, quackery, and poison. The primary weapon in the fight against Courtesan's disease was mercury. It had been used for centuries, in both the East and the West, to treat skin ailments, and its effects on the sores caused by syphilis seemed, at first, to be miraculous. The application of mercury-based ointments could cause the lesions to dry up and disappear. To the desperate women in their owners, it looked like a cure, but it was a devil's bargain. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin. The cure was, in fact, a slow and agonizing poison. You don't see the application of these treatments directly that happens behind the closed doors of the quarantine rooms, but you see the results in the women who survived the cure and are, for a time, allowed to return to work. You see a woman whose hands have a constant, uncontrollable tremor. You see another whose gums are blackened and swollen, her breath foul, her teeth loose in their sockets. These are the classic signs of mercury poisoning. The women might also suffer from memory loss, severe mood swings, and eventually a complete mental breakdown. They had traded the visible sores of the disease for a less visible, but far more insidious decay from within. The most horrific form of this treatment was the mercury sweat bath. A woman would be placed in a small, enclosed steam box, her head sticking out of the top. Cinnabar, a mercury sulfide ore, would be heated on a small brazier inside the box. The woman would be forced to sit for hours, inhaling the toxic mercury vapor and sweating profusely. The idea was to sweat the poison of the disease out of the body. In reality, the woman was simply absorbing a massive dose of mercury directly into her lungs and bloodstream. Many did not survive the treatment itself. This reliance on mercury created a grim, no-win scenario. A woman feared the disease, but she also feared the cure. When she felt the first symptoms, she was faced with a terrible choice. Hide it and hope it goes away at once, or report it and subject herself to the horrors of the mercury treatment. A lesser known and deeply disturbing aspect of these medical practices was the financial component. The brothel owner would pay for the expensive mercury treatments, but the cost, like everything else, would be added to the woman's debt. A woman who fell ill and recovered would find herself not only physically ravaged by the treatment, but also plunged even deeper into financial bondage. The house profited from her sickness, transforming her personal tragedy into another entry on a ledger. She was, in effect, paying to be poisoned. The historical debate here is about efficacy and belief. Did the brothel owners and the doctors of the time genuinely believe that mercury was a cure? Or did they know it was a poison but used it anyway, because it was the only thing that seemed to have a visible effect? Most historians lean toward the former. In a pre-scientific age, the link between the cure and the long-term neurological damage was not well understood. The disappearance of the external sores was seen as proof of success. They were fighting a monster they couldn't see with a weapon they didn't understand, and the results were catastrophic. One evening, the door to the quarantine room you previously visited is open. The room is empty. The futon is gone. The air is thick with the smell of astringent herbs and something else. A sharp, metallic tang that stings your nostrils. It's the ghost scent of mercury. The room is being aired out, prepared for its next occupant. You never see the girl with the beautiful singing voice again. No one mentions her name. It's as if she never existed. Did she succumb to the disease? Or did she succumb to the cure? In the end, what was the difference? Later that week, you see Hannah in the bathing room, examining her own skin with a worried expression. You see the fear in her eyes, the same fear you see in all the women. It's a fear that has nothing to do with displeasing a client or falling behind on a dance lesson. It's a primal, existential fear. You realize that the greatest threat in this house is not the cruelty of the Yarite or the weight of your debt. It is the fragility of your own body. It is the invisible enemies that can invade it, and the visible poisons used to fight them. The shimmering world of Yoshiwara, with its silken music and poetry, is built on a foundation of decaying flesh, and the sweet smell of incense is never quite strong enough to cover the faint, metallic scent of the cure. As you grow older, your training diversifies. The grueling physical education and walking endurance continues. But now you must cultivate your mind. A top-ranking Courtesan was not just a beautiful object. She was expected to be a witty, cultured, and entertaining companion. Her value lay not only in her appearance, but in her ability to captivate a man's intellect and ego. This is the art of the profession, and it is another performance you must master. Your days become filled with lessons. You are taught calligraphy as do, the art of beautiful writing. You spend hours grinding ink, learning the precise strokes to form characters that are not just legible but aesthetically pleasing. Your hand, already calloused from chores, must now learn to be graceful and steady. You are taught to play the shamisen, the three-stringed lute that is the ubiquitous soundtrack of the floating world. The instrument is difficult. Your fingers, unaccustomed to the strings, become sore and blistered. You must learn dozens of songs, from mournful ballads to lively folk tunes, and you must learn to sing while you play. Your voice trained to be pleasing and demure. You are taught the art of the tea ceremony Seido, a slow, meditative ritual of precise, elegant movements. Every gesture, from how you hold the whisk to how you turn the bowl before presenting it, is prescribed. It is a lesson in grace, poise, and control. You are taught poetry, memorizing the classic works and learning the rules of composing your own short poems, or haiku. You are taught the board game Go, a complex strategy game you must be able to play well enough to provide a challenge to a patron, but never well enough to actually beat him unless he allows it. This curriculum was designed to create a woman who could converse intelligently with the highest-ranking samurai and wealthiest merchants. These men did not come to Yoshiwara just for physical intimacy. They came for an escape from the rigid social structures of their own lives. In the company of an Oiran, a man could relax, speak his mind, drink sake, and be entertained by a beautiful woman who was also his intellectual peer, or at least could convincingly play the part. However, there is a darker side to this artistic education. You are not just learning to entertain, you are learning to manipulate. The most important lesson is the art of conversation, and specifically, the art of flattery. You learn to read a man's ego, to find his insecurities and soothe them with carefully chosen words. You learn to laugh at his jokes, even when they are not funny. You learn to feign intense interest in his boring stories about business or politics. You learn to make every client feel as if he is the most brilliant, charming, and important man you have ever met. A little-known aspect of this training was the study of the client. Before a high-ranking courtesan met with an important new patron, the house would do its research. Information would be gathered about the man's business, his family, his hobbies, his temperament. The courtesan would then be briefed. She would learn his favorite poet, his favorite type of sake, the name of his son. This allowed her to tailor her conversation to him, to create an instant and completely artificial sense of intimacy and connection. It was a sophisticated form of emotional intelligence, weaponized for commercial purposes. The historical debate here concerns the authenticity of this culture. Was the Oiran a true artisan intellectual, a woman who found genuine expression and empowerment through her skills? Or was her art just another part of the package, a high-gloss varnish on a commercial transaction. Some scholars argue that for some women, these arts were a genuine source of pride and personal fulfillment, a space where they could exercise their intelligence and creativity in a world that otherwise denied them agency. Others argue that it was all a sham, that the poetry and music were just as much a part of the costume as the white makeup. Every note and brushstroke calculated for maximum financial return. One afternoon, you are in a calligraphy lesson. The instructor, a stern old man from the city, has asked you to copy a classic poem about the fleeting nature of cherry blossoms. As you carefully form the characters, you find yourself getting lost in the words, in the beauty of the sentiment. For a moment, you forget where you are. You are just a girl, learning a poem. The instructor comes to your desk. He looks at your work and nods. Good, he says. The form is correct, but it lacks feeling. He then looks at Hannah's work. Hers is better. You can feel the sadness in the strokes. Later, you ask Hannah how she did it. I wasn't thinking about the cherry blossoms, she says quietly, not looking at you. I was thinking about the girl in the quarantine room. Her words hit you with the force of a physical blow. You realize the devastating truth. To master these arts, you must channel your own genuine pain, your own sorrow, your own despair, and package it into a beautiful, consumable form. Your heartbreak becomes a sad song on the shamisen. Your loneliness becomes a mournful poem. Your suffering is the raw material for your art. You are being taught to mine the darkest corners of your own soul and sell the jewels you find there. The education of a courtesan is not just about learning to be beautiful or clever. It's about learning how to commodify your own humanity. After years of relentless training, the day finally comes when you graduate from being a shinzo to a full-fledged courtesan. It is your debut, your mise age, a term that poetically means hoisting from the water, but which has a much more pragmatic and grim significance. This is the night your virginity will be sold to the highest bidder. The preparations are elaborate. You are dressed in the most splendid kimono you have ever worn, a heavy garment of silk and gold thread that represents a massive addition to your debt. Your face is a perfect white mask, your teeth a black void, your hair a towering, ornamental sculpture. You look in the mirror and see a stranger, a beautiful, terrifying doll. You are no longer Komatsu, the little pine. You have been given a new, more prestigious name, one that reflects your new status. The client who has won the bid for your mise age is a wealthy merchant, a man you have never met. He has paid a truly astronomical sum to the house, a portion of which is meant to go toward reducing your debt, though you know the house's creative accounting will ensure you see little benefit. You are led not through the main streets, but through a series of covered passageways to a high-end tea house, one of the grand establishments where the most important transactions take place. You walk with a slow, swaying hachimonji gait you have practiced for years. It is no longer agonizing, but it feels heavy, deliberate, each step pulling you further away from the girl you once were. The room you are shown into is a masterpiece of understated elegance. The tatami is freshened green. The paper screens are decorated with hand-painted landscapes, and in exquisite flower arrangements it's in the alcove. The air is perfumed with the most expensive aloes wood incense. The merchant is already there, kneeling on a silk cushion. He is older, his face flushed with sake. He looks at you with a look of undisguised ownership. This is what he has paid for. You kneel opposite him, your hands placed demurely in your lap, your eyes downcast. The evening is a slow, carefully choreographed performance. You serve him sake, your movements as precise and graceful as the tea ceremony you have practiced 1,000 times. You play the shamisen and sing, a song about unrequited love, your voice steady despite the frantic pounding of your heart. You engage in polite, witty conversation, laughing softly at his jokes, complimenting his knowledge of poetry. You are playing the part of the perfect companion, the role you have been trained for your entire life. But everything feels unreal. The room feels like a stage set. The man's laughter sounds hollow. Your own voice seems to be coming from somewhere outside your body. You are observing yourself, watching a performance. This detachment, you realize, is a survival mechanism. It is the only way to endure what is about to happen. The historical reality of the Meiji Age is a subject of much debate and sadness. While it was a hugely important rite of passage that launched a Courtesan's career, it was, at its core, a brutal commercial transaction. There was no pretense of romance or choice. It was a cold, hard sale. The event was oft unhyped and mythologized, but the reality for the young woman at the center of it was likely one of fear, pain, and profound humiliation. A little-known and rather cynical aspect of the Meiji Age concerned the bidding process itself. Sometimes, a bidding war for a promising girl's debut would be artificially inflated by the brothel owner. The owner might use shills or fake bidders to drive up the price, squeezing the maximum possible amount from the final patron. This meant the girl started her career with an even more insurmountable debt, while the house reaped a massive windfall from her very first night. As the evening wears on, the attendants discreetly clear away the sake cups and the food trays. The paper lanterns are dimmed. You are left alone with the client, though you know that attendants are just outside the paper screen. Their presence is silent, watchful guarantee that the transaction will be completed. What happens next is not a scene of passion. It is a quiet, awkward, and deeply impersonal procedure. The man, clumsy from drink, unties the great brocade dobi at your front. The heavy outer kimonos are removed, layer by layer, until you are left in a thin underrobe. There is no gentleness, no care. It is the unwrapping of a purchase. You lie on the futon that has been prepared, your eyes fixed on a knot in the wooden ceiling. You retreat into that quiet place in your mind you have learned to build, the place where you are not really here. You detach from your body, letting it become the object the man has paid for. It is a violation, but you feel it from a great distance. The pain is muted, the humiliation dulled. It is happening to the doll in the mirror, not to you. Afterward, the man falls into a drunken, snoring sleep. You lie perfectly still in the darkness, listening to his breathing. You do not cry. You have been trained not to. Crying is a luxury you cannot afford. You simply lie there, feeling a profound and chilling emptiness. The performance is over. The curtain has fallen on the first act of your professional life. You have crossed a threshold from which there is no return. You are now officially a part of the shimmering, sordid world you were brought here to join. The goshen, the paper screen, has been closed behind you, shutting you into a new reality where intimacy is a performance, and your body is the stage. The morning after your Meiji Age introduces you to a new ritual, one that is as cold and impersonal as the transaction it follows. This is the post-coital cleansing, a routine that strips away any lingering illusion of intimacy and reduces the act to a simple matter of hygiene and disease prevention. You are woken before dawn, not by a bell, but by a quiet touch from an older, lower-ranking attendant. The client is still asleep. You slip out of the futon, your movements silent and practiced. You are led from the tea-house room, back through the quiet corridors to a designated washing area within the brothel. This is not the communal bathing room. This is a more private, functional space, more like a clinic than a spa. The room is stark and clean. There is a wooden floor with a drain, a number of large ceramic jugs filled with water, and various bowls and cloths. The attendant, a dour, middle-aged woman who has seen this thousands of times, works with brisk, unemotional efficiency. She hands you a small bowl containing a solution. It smells sharp and astringent. It's a mixture of water and sake, or sometimes a herbal infusion believed to have cleansing properties. You are instructed to use this to wash yourself internally, a primitive form of doshing. The method is crude, uncomfortable, and of questionable medical efficacy, but it is a mandatory part of the procedure. The belief was that the alcohol in the sake would purify and prevent the transmission of disease. After this, you wash the rest of your body with a cloth and warm water. There is no leisurely soaking. It is a functional, almost frantic scrub down. The attendant inspects you afterward, checking for any marks or signs of injury. It is not a check born of concern for your well-being, but of concern for the house's property. Any damage to the asset must be noted. This entire process is conducted in mere silence. The attendant says nothing, her face a blank mask. There is no comfort offered, no words of reassurance. It is a deeply isolating and humiliating experience. It reinforces the message of the previous night. Your body is a vessel, a tool used for a commercial purpose. And now, it must be cleaned and prepared for its next use. A particularly grim and little-known aspect of this post-encounter ritual was the use of certain plant materials as suppositories. For example, the small, softened piece of kambasi, weed, or even specially prepared paper was sometimes used, based on the belief that it could absorb any impurities left behind. These folk remedies were, of course, completely ineffective against venereal diseases and likely increased the risk of infection and irritation. They highlight the desperation and the profound lack of scientific understanding that governed these women's lives. The historical debates surrounding this topic is complex. Some historians, particularly in the past, have tried to romanticize the lives of courtesans, focusing on their ardent beauty and glossing over these grim realities. More recent, feminist-influenced scholarship has pushed back hard against this, insisting on a frank and unflinching look at the brutal, androgyphonic, and exploitative aspects of the profession. The post-coital cleansing ritual is a key piece of evidence in this argument. It demonstrates that no matter how much poetry and music surrounded the encounter, it ultimately ended in a cold, cynical, and dehumanizing procedure. Once the washing is complete, you are given a simple cotton yukata to wear. Your magnificent, death-inducing kimono from the night before is whisked away to be cleaned, censed, and prepared for its next outing. You are taken back to your small room in the main house, the one you now share with only one other courtesan of your same rank. You sit alone in the gray light of dawn. Your body aches. You feel raw, both physically and emotionally. The elaborate mask of the oiron has been washed away, and you are left with yourself. But who is that? No, you are no longer a child, no longer a trainee. You are a woman who has been bought and sold. Hannah finds you there. She has been through this herself. Years ago, she sits beside you and, for the first time, she shares her own food with you, a small rice ball from her own breakfast tray. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. The simple, shared act of eating is a gesture of solidarity, a silent acknowledgement of the ordeal you have just passed through. It is a small moment of human connection in a world that is designed to strip you of it. In that moment, you understand the sisterhood of the house in a new way. It is not just about competition and jealousy. It is also about a shared, unspoken trauma. Only another woman in this house can truly understand what you are feeling. The cleansing ritual is over, but you feel dirtier than ever before. It is a stain not on your skin, but on your spirit. And you know, with a chilling certainty, that this is a ritual you will have to repeat again, and again, and again. It is now a permanent part of the job description. Now that you are an established courtesan, a new fantasy begins to dominate the conversations and dreams of the house. The hope of Adana. Adana was more than just a regular client. He was a wealthy patron who would enter into a long-term, exclusive relationship with a courtesan, effectively becoming her sole sponsor. The ultimate dream was not just to have Adana, but to have him perform a UKE, the act of buying out a courtesan's contract and freeing her from the brothel. This was the fairy tale ending, the grand prize of the Yoshiwara game. To be bought out meant your entire debt, massively inflated by the house, would be paid in full. You would leave the floating world behind and, in the best case scenario, become the man's wife or, more commonly, his well-cared-for mistress, set up in your own small house in the city. This dream is the fuel that keeps many of the women going. It is the subject of endless speculation. Who will be the next to be bought out? Which courtesan has caught the eye of the rich silk merchant from Kyoto? Is the powerful samurai's interest in Chiku genuine? Or is he just toying with her? The house management subtly encourages this fantasy. The story of a girl who made it is told and retold, becoming a house legend. It gives the women hope. And a hopeful woman is a more compliant and harder working woman. You see the game being played all around you. Yoshiwara, now a rising star in her own right, deploying all the arts she has learned. She reserves her most dazzling smiles and wittiest poems for the wealthiest of her clients. She subtly plays them against each other, fanning the flames of their jealousy and possessiveness, hoping one will be driven to claim her as his own. It is a dangerous, high-stakes game of emotional chess. The relationship with the Dana was meant to mimic a marriage. It involved elaborate ceremonies and exchanges of gifts. The courtesan was expected to be completely loyal to her patron, refusing all other clients. In return, the Dana was responsible for all her expenses, her clothes, her food, her cosmetics, plus a hefty regular payment to the brothel for her time. It was an incredibly expensive arrangement, a status symbol for the man, proof of his immense wealth and power. But the reality of the Dana relationship was often far from the romantic ideal. It was, first and foremost, a business contract. The man owned the woman's time and affection, and he could be as demanding, jealous, and controlling as any husband. The woman, in turn, was often performing a long-term role, feigning a love and devotion she did not feel, her every action calculated to maintain the patron's interest and generosity. A little-known and rather tragic aspect of this system was the trial period, before a man committed to the enormous expense of a full miyuke. He might enter into a shorter term than a contract. If, after a year or two, he grew tired of the woman or his financial situation changed, he could simply terminate the contract. For the courtesan, this was a devastating blow. She would be returned to the general pool of courtesans. Her status diminished. She was now used goods, a woman who had been sponsored and then discarded. Her chances of finding another Dana, let alone one who would buy her out, were significantly reduced. She had tasted a semblance of freedom, only to have it snatched away. The historical debate here is about statistics. How common was a miyuke really? While it forms the central plot of countless plays, poems, and stories about Yoshiwara, historical records suggest it was incredibly rare. For every one woman who was bought out by a loving patron, there were thousands who were not. The vast majority of courtesans never achieved this fairy tale ending. The Dana myth was just that, a myth. A beautiful, powerful, and ultimately cruel eye that kept the system running. One day, you attend a celebration for one of the house's top oiran. A powerful rice broker from Osaka has officially become her Dana. The ceremony is lavish. Sake flows freely. The oiran is radiant, dressed in a kimono, gifted to her by her new patron. Everyone congratulates her. Their faces a mixture of genuine happiness for her and sharp, painful envy. She is one step closer to the dream. You watch her as she kneels beside her patron, her smile perfect, her devotion seemingly absolute. But in a quiet moment, you see her glance toward the door, her eyes lingering on one of the young male servants at the tea house. It's a fleeting look, one that no one else notices, but in that glance, you see a flicker of a different story, a different longing. Her heart, you suspect, lies elsewhere, but her future lies with the old man beside her. You realize the terrible paradox of the Dana. To win your freedom, you must place yourself entirely in the hands of one man. Your escape from a large cage is to enter a smaller, or gilded one. It may be a life of comfort and security, but is it a life of love? Is it freedom? The hope of a Dana is a beautiful, shimmering bubble, but you are beginning to see how thin the surface is, and you wonder what will happen when it bursts. In a system built on perfection, mistakes are not tolerated. The flawlessly executed performance of being a courtesan requires immense discipline, and any deviation from the script is met with swift and often humiliating punishment. The house runs on a complex set of rules, both written and unwritten, and you learn them through painful trial and error. The punishments are varied, tailored to the severity of the infraction. For a minor mistake, spilling tea, using the wrong honorific with a client, being a minute late for a lesson, the punishment might be a sharp verbal rebuke from the yarite in front of all the other girls. The sting of the public shaming is often worse than any physical blow. It's a tool to maintain order through peer pressure and embarrassment. For a more serious error, such as a poorly mended kimono that a client notices or a clumsy performance on the shamisen, the punishment might escalate. You could be assigned extra, unpleasant chores, like cleaning the latrines or spending a whole day pounding rice. Or you could be deprived of a small privilege, like a sweet snack or your turn in the bath when the water is still relatively clean. The goal is to make your life just a little more miserable, to remind you that every comfort, no matter how small, is conditional on your perfect behavior. But for major transgressions, the punishments become far more severe, openly defying the right, being caught in a lie, or, worst of all, doing something that causes the house to lose money. These are crimes that warrant a more significant response. One day, Taicho, whose ambition has always been matched by her arrogance, makes a terrible mistake. During an evening with a wealthy but notoriously difficult client, she loses her temper. The man makes a crude remark, and instead of responding with the demure, placating grace she has been taught, she snaps back with a sarcastic retort. The client is deeply offended. He storms out of the tea house, cancels all his future appointments, and spreads the word to his powerful friends that the courtesans of this house are ill-mannered. The fallout is immediate. The house has lost a major source of income, and its reputation has been damaged. The next morning, the housemaster summons Kiko. The rest of you are made to watch. The punishment is not a beating. It is something far more calculated and psychologically devastating. The housemaster orders the light to cut Kiku's hair. In this world, a woman's hair is her crowning glory, a symbol of Hearst Addison beauty. The elaborate hairstyle takes a week to create and is a source of immense pride. Light takes a pair of sharp shoes and, with a few quick, brutal snips, cuts off one of the large, waxed wings of Kiku's date Hyogo Hygiene on. The hairstyle is ruined, lopsided, and grotesque. Chiku doesn't scream or cry. She just stands there, trembling, as her symbol of status falls to the floor. She is then confined to her room for a week, forbidden from working or even being seen, until a hairdresser can come and try to salvage the mess. The humiliation is absolute. She has been ritually uncrowned in front of her rivals. The lesser known, and particularly cruel, form of punishment was related to food. If a girl committed an offense, she might be served her rice with a sprinkling of ash in it, or be given a bowl of water instead of soup. This was not about starvation, but about shame. She would be forced to eat this defiled meal in front of the other girls, a visible sign of her disgrace. It was a way of making her ingest her own failure. The historical debate around punishment in Yoshiwara centers on its severity. Some accounts, often from abolitionist or moralizing sources, describe scenes of horrific physical torture. Other, more romanticized accounts downplay the punitive aspect of the life. The consensus among most modern historians is that while extreme physical abuse was likely not the norm, as it would damage the product a constant, grinding regime of psychological abuse, public shaming, and calculated deprivation was an essential and universal to love control. The goal was to break a woman's spirit, not just her body. Watching Kiku's public shaming, you feel a complex mix of emotions. There is a small, dark part of you that feels a flicker of satisfaction at seeing your rival brought low, but the dominant feeling is one of cold, hard fear. You see how precarious your own position is. You are one misspoken word, one moment of lost temper, away from the same fate. The system is designed to keep you insecure. Your status, your comforts, your very appearance are not your own. They are privileges granted to you by the house, and they can be taken away in an instant. The fear of punishment is a powerful motivator. It keeps you smiling when you want to scream. It keeps you bowing when you want to stand tall. It keeps your performance perfect, your mask firmly in place. You learn that in Yoshiwara, freedom is not the opposite of bondage. The opposite of bondage is punishment. The years pass in a blur of seasons, a cycle of festivals, and a parade of nameless faces in the tea houses. You have become an accomplished courtesan. Your movements are fluid. Your conversation is sparkling. Your Shamesome playing is flawless. You have your own small circle of regular patrons. You are, by all measures, a success. But success in Yoshiwara is a fleeting commodity, as transient as the cherry blossoms you paint on scrolls. That one morning, as you are applying the thick white oshiro eye to your face, you see it. It is a tiny, almost invisible line, fanning out from the corner of your eye. You lean closer to the polished bronze mirror. Your heart suddenly cold. It wasn't there yesterday, or was it? You try to smooth it with your finger, but it remains, a tiny crack in the perfect porcelain mask. It is the first whisper of a terrifying, inevitable truth. You are getting older. In the world of Yoshiwara, youth is the most valuable currency, and it is a currency you are spending every single day. The entire industry is predicated on the beauty and allure of young women. A Courtesan's career is brutally short. She is a flower that is cultivated to bloom spectacularly, that everyone knows the bloom will be brief. You start to notice other small changes. It takes a little longer for the aches in your back to fade after a long night of entertaining. You feel a weariness that sleep doesn't seem to cure. The heavy, waxed hairstyle feels heavier than it used to. These are the small, insidious betrayals of your own body. The fear of aging is a constant, gnawing anxiety that lies behind the placid smiles of all the women in the house. You see it in the slightly desperate way a courtesan in her late 20s flirts with a new, young client. You see it in the extra layer of makeup an older woman applies to hide the subtle sagging of her jawline. You see the panic in her eyes when a wealthy patron who used to favor her starts requesting a newer, younger face. The house itself is unsentimental about this process. It is a business, and it needs a constant supply of fresh product. As you and your generation of courtesans begin to show the first signs of fading, the new crop of young Kayamuro arrives, their faces fresh and unlined, their laughter echoing in the hallways. You look at them and see yourself, all those years ago, and you realize, with a chilling clarity, that they are your replacements. A little known but poignant custom in some brothels was the ceremony of the changing of the guard. When a topo ear unofficially retired or was finally bought out, her most prized and expensive kimono, the one she wore for her grandest processions, would be passed down to her designated successor. This was framed as an honor, a passing of the torch, but it was also a stark reminder of the cyclical and replaceable nature of their existence. You are not a unique star, you are a role, and when your time is up, another actress will step into the costume. The historical debate on this topic centers on the average career length of a courtesan. Some estimates suggest that a woman's peak earning years were shockingly short, from roughly age 16 to 22. By her mid-20s, she was often considered to be past her prime. What happened to these women after their bloom faded? The historical record is often tragically silent. They disappear from the glamorous accounts of the floating world. You try to fight it. You become more meticulous with your makeup, more dedicated to your art. You practice your smile in the mirror, trying to erase the tiny lines of fatigue and worry. You are running a race against time, and you know it is a race you cannot win. One evening, you are with a long-time patron, a man who has always been kind to you. He is looking at you, a thoughtful, almost sad expression on his face. You look tired. Komatsu, he says, using your old name in a moment of familiarity. You force a bright laugh. The season is busy. That is all. But his words linger in the air. He sees it. He sees through the paint, through the performance. He sees the tiny crack in the facade. That night, you lie awake on your futon, the man's words echoing in your head. The fear of disease, of punishment, of death, these are all acute, immediate fears. But this fear is different. It's a slow, creeping dread, a certainty of your own obsolescence. You are a flower, and you can feel your petals starting to wilt. The question that keeps you awake all night is not if you will fade, but what will happen to you when you do. Where do the fallen flowers of Yoshiwara go? The answer, you suspect, is not a beautiful one. The tiny line by your eye is a crack in your professional facade. But there's another, more sinister fissure growing elsewhere. In the pages of your account book, you have been working for years, earning sums of money that would be a fortune to a girl from your village. And yet, you are no closer to being free. In fact, you are deeper in debt than the day you began. Once a year, the Yar sits down with you to go over your ledger. It's a humiliating ritual. You, a woman celebrated for your wit and culture, are treated like a child as she explains the numbers. The ledger is a work of fiction, a masterpiece of creative accounting designed to ensure your perpetual servitude. The house charges you for everything at wildly inflated prices. The cost of a single formal kimono is more than a farmer might earn in a year. The fees for the hairdresser, the music teacher, the calligrapher all are deducted from your earnings. You are charged for your food, your lodging, the charcoal for your brazier, the oil for your lamp. You are even charged for the tea that is served to your clients. You are a star employee who is being billed for her own office supplies. Fines are another source of ever-increasing debt. A small stain on a kimono. They find a chipped say cup. They find sickness that causes you to miss a night of work. A massive fine for lost revenue. Plus the cost of any medicine you were given. The system is designed to be inescapable. Any financial progress you make is immediately wiped out by a new, exorbitant expense. This practice, known as debt peonage, was the legal and economic bedrock of Yoshiwara. A woman's contract was technically for a fixed term, usually 10 years, but the debt ensured that at the end of the term, she could not leave. The law was on the side of the brothel owner. A woman could not legally leave her post until her debt was settled in full. Since her debt was designed to be unpayable, her 10-year contract was, in effect, a life sentence. You look at the numbers on the page, the elegant brushstrokes of recording your financial ruin. You see the massive cost of your marriage ceremony, an event from which you personally earned nothing but which shackled you with a debt you are still paying off. You see the cost of the silk futon you sleep on, the expensive hairpins you wear. You are surrounded by luxury, but you own none of it. You are merely renting it from your captors at an ruinous interest rate. A little known but particularly cynical part of this system was the retirement fund. Some houses would tell their courtesans that a small portion of their earnings was being set aside in a fund for their retirement. This gave the women a sliver of hope, a belief that even if they weren't bought out by a dana, they would have a small nest egg to survive on when they were too old to work. However, these funds were often phantom accounts. The money was simply absorbed back into the house's profits. When a woman was finally retired, she would be told that her accumulated fines and expenses had wiped out her savings. She would be turned out with nothing. The historical debate here revolves around the women's understanding of their situation. Were they naive victims who didn't understand the financial trap they were in? Or were they fully aware of the hopelessness of their situation but simply had no other choice? The evidence suggests that most women were not financially illiterate. They knew they were being cheated. They saw the ledger. They knew the numbers didn't add up, but they were powerless. They were wrapped in a legal and economic system that was designed from the ground up to exploit them. Their awareness only added to their sense of despair. You stare at the final number at the bottom of the ledger. It's a figure so large it seems unreal. You could work for another decade and still not come close to paying it off. The Yara looks at you, her expression a mixture of pity and cold. Hard business. You've had an expensive year, she says, as if commenting on the weather. You will have to work harder next year. You walk away from the meeting, a cold dread settling in your stomach. The hope of a day end of buying you out, once a shimmering dream, now feels like a childish fantasy. The numbers on that page are the real story of your life. They are the iron bars of your cage, more real and more confining than any physical wall. Yusiki later that day. She, too, has just had her meeting with the accountant. Her usual arrogance is gone, replaced by a pale, brittle look. She has seen the same truth you have. For a moment, your eyes meet across the corridor. There is no rivalry in her gaze, no animosity. There is only a shared, silent understanding of your mutual damnation. You realize that the most beautiful performance in all of Yoshiwara is not a dance or a song. It is the accounting. It is the magic trick that transforms a woman's entire life of labor into a single, insurmountable number. And once you see behind the curtain of that trick, the world of the floating world ceases to float. It sinks, and it pulls you down with it. The inevitable consequence of your own aging and the insurmountable debt becomes clear when you look at the women who have been in Yoshiwara the longest. The house is a closed ecosystem, and very few ever truly leave. They are simply demoted. You begin to see the ghosts of your own future walking the halls. You remember Ayam, an old aunt who was the toast of the district when you first arrived. Her processions were legendary. Her client list a roll call of the most powerful men in Edo. She was beautiful, witty, and seemed destined for a glorious Miyukai. But it never happened. Her patron died. Her beauty began to fade, and younger, fresher faces captured the attention of the wealthy clients. Now, Ayam is in her 30s. She no longer works as a frontline courtesan. Her name is no longer requested. She has been demoted. You see her sometimes in the kitchens. Her once manicured hands now read and chapped from scrubbing vegetables. Her elegant toe-ear-on kimonos have been replaced with the drab, functional robes of a house servant. She avoids eye contact with the younger courtesans, her face a permanent mask of quiet resignation. She is a fallen star, now tasked with polishing the silverware for the new constellations. This downward mobility was a common, brutal reality. When a courtesan was no longer profitable in the main rooms, the house would find other uses for her. She might become a Yorite, a manager. Like the sharp-faced woman who first greeted you, this was considered one of the better outcomes, as it came with a degree of authority. But these women were often harsh and bitter, their cruelty fueled by their own lost youth and crushed dreams. They enforced the rules of the system that had destroyed them. Other women would be demoted to lower-ranking positions within the sexual economy of the house. They might be assigned to serve less wealthy clients merchants of the lower class, or rowdy groups of samurai in less glamorous, back alley tea houses. Their prices would be a fraction of what they once commanded. The lowest rung of this ladder was the Hashijei Oro, or bridge courtesan. These were the women who served the poorest clients, often in squalid conditions. For a pittance, many of the older, debt-ridden, and often sickly women ended their careers here, trapped in the most dangerous and degrading part of the profession. A particularly sad and little-known fate for some of these older women was to become a ghost. This was a woman who was too old or too sick to even work as a Hashijei Oro. She would be kept on by the house as an unpaid servant, living in a small, forgotten room, performing the most menial tasks in exchange for a bowl of rice and a roof over her head. She was a living ghost, haunting the place of her former glory, a terrifying cautionary tale for the younger generation. The historical debate here concerns the agency of these women. Did they passively accept their demotion, or did they find ways to resist or adapt? Some historians argue that becoming a Yorite, or even a teacher of the arts, gave these older women a new kind of power and influence. They became the repositories of the house's culture and knowledge, mentoring younger girls. Others argue that this is a romanticized view, and that for most, the descent through the ranks was a period of unmitigated suffering, exploitation, and despair, with little to no agency involved. One afternoon, you are passing by the laundry sheds at the back of the house. You see a woman hunched over a large tub of steaming water. Her back to you, she is scrubbing a kimono with a brutal, rhythmic motion. Her hair is thin and gray, tied back in a simple, messy bun. As she turns to grab another piece of clothing, you see her face. It is Ayam. Her face is no longer the perfect oval you remember. It is thin and lined with a deep, profound weariness. She catches you looking at her. For a moment, her eyes flash with the old fire, the pride of the oer on she once was. A flicker of shame and anger crosses her face. Then, it is gone, replaced by a dull, empty look. She turns her back to you and continues her scrubbing. The encounter lasts only a few seconds, but it shakes you to your core. You see your own potential future in her tired, hunched shoulders. The path you are on does not lead to a fairy tale ending with a wealthy patron. It leads to a laundry tub in a cold, damp shed. You realize that Yoshiwara is not just a place of beautiful surfaces and ugly realities. It is a machine that consumes youth. It takes in young girls, polishes them until they shine, displays them until their luster fades, and then discards them into the dark, greasy corners of its own engine. The fallen stars are not anomalies. They are the natural, inevitable byproduct of the system. And you know, with a certainty that makes you feel sick, that your own descent has already begun. The walls of Yoshiwara are high, but the moat of death is deeper. Escape is a fantasy, a whisper in the dark. But the idea of freedom, what it might actually taste like, is a thought you sometimes allow yourself to have in the dead of night. Running away is next to impossible. The Great Gate is the only official exit, and it is heavily guarded. Anyone trying to leave without the proper papers is immediately caught and returned. The punishments for runaways are severe, designed to be a terrifying deterrent to anyone else thinking of trying. A caught runaway would be beaten, publicly shamed, and have even more debt piled upon her. Her life would be made a living hell. So, the only legitimate way out is to complete your contract. But as you know from your ledger, that is a financial impossibility. The only remaining path is the one you see in your dreams. The Meiyukai Die, being bought out by a patron. But what happens after? What is life like for the woman who wins the game and walks out of the Great Gate for the last time? The house legends always end at the gate, with the woman leading on the arm of her wealthy savior. The story never follows them into the city. You try to imagine it. You would be free from the bell that dictates your every waking moment. You would be free from the communal baths, the shared meals, the prying eyes. You could sleep on a soft pillow, in any position you want. You could let your hair grow naturally, free of wax and heavy ornaments. You could let your teeth be white. You could wear simple, comfortable clothes. This vision of simple comforts is intoxicating. But as you get older and more cynical, you start to see the darker side of this freedom. You would leave one cage only to enter another. If you became a man's mistress, your life would be entirely dependent on his whims and his generosity. You would have no legal standing, no rights. If he tired of you, or if his business failed, you could be cast out onto the street with nothing. Even if you were lucky enough to become his wife, you would enter a new world with its own rigid set of rules. You would have to navigate the complex world of family politics, dealing with a mother-in-law who might despise you for your past, and a society that would always whisper about your origins. You would forever be the Courtesan he married. Your past would be a stain that could never be washed away. And what skills would you have to survive in this new world? You can play the shamisen, write a beautiful poem, and perform a flawless tea ceremony. But you cannot cook a family meal, manage a household budget, or weave cloth. The very skills that made you a valuable commodity in Yoshiwara are useless, even suspect. In the life of a respectable housewife, you would be an exotic, ornamental creature, ill-suited for the practical realities of everyday life. A little known but very real problem for these freed women was social isolation. They had spent their entire lives in the insular, female-dominated world of the brothel. Their sisters were the only family they knew. Once they left, they were cut off from that world, but they were not accepted into the world of respectable women either. They were caught between two societies, belonging to neither. The loneliness could be crushing. The historical debate here is a poignant one. Was it better to be a top-ranking queen in the cage of Yoshiwara, with a certain degree of status and autonomy within that world, or a second-class citizen in the free world outside? There is no easy answer. Some accounts suggest that freed courtesans were deeply unhappy, unable to adapt to their new lives. Others tell stories of women who successfully navigated the transition and found a measure of peace and security. It likely depended entirely on the character of the woman and the kindness of the man she was with. You sometimes see them, the freed women. They occasionally come back to Yoshiwara to visit, perhaps to attend a festival or see their old sisters. They arrive in elegant palanquins, dressed in the sober, understated kimonos of married women. They look clean, healthy, and prosperous. But you watch them closely. You see the way their eyes scan the familiar streets with a look of profound nostalgia, mixed with something else, sadness, perhaps, or regret. They laugh and chat with their old friends. But there is a distance, a barrier. They are visitors now, tourists, in their own past. They no longer belong. One day, a former courtesan from your own house comes to visit. She was bought out a few years ago by a wealthy timber merchant. She brings expensive gifts for the house and sweets for all the girls. She looks happy, but as she is leaving, you overhear her speaking quietly to Hannah. "I miss the noise," she says, a strange, wistful look on her face. "My house is so quiet." Her words send a chill down your spine. The constant noise of the house, the music, the chatter, the laughter, the arguments is something you dream of escaping. But for this woman, silence is not peace. Silence is loneliness. You realize the most bitter truth of all. Even if you get out, Yoshiwara never truly leaves you. It reshapes your soul, rewires your desires. Freedom, you suspect, might not be a feeling of release. It might just be a different kind of emptiness, a different kind of cage. The taste of freedom, you fear, might just be the taste of ashes. The final, unassailable truth of Yoshiwara arrives not as a lesson or a lecture, but as a quiet, chilling absence. One morning, you notice that a woman who lived down the corridor, an older courtesan named Fumi, is not at the morning wash. She was a quiet woman, long past her prime, who mostly did mending work. She had a persistent, rattling cough that was the soundtrack to your late nights. Today, there is only silence. No one speaks of it. The day proceeds as normal. The bells ring. The chores are done. The lessons are taught. But a subtle, nervous energy ripples through the house. The other older women are quieter than usual, their faces tight with a fear that looks different from the everyday anxieties. Later that day, you see two rough-looking men, not servants of the house, carrying a long, rolled-up straw mat out of a back entrance. It is tied with coarse rope. It is the size and shape of a human body. They carry it without ceremony, like a bundle of old rags, and load it onto a simple cart. You realize it is Fum's futon mat, the one she slept on every night. She is inside it. You feel a wave of nausea. You look at Hannah, who is standing nearby, her face pale and impassive. "Where are they taking her?" You whisper, your voice trembling. Hannah doesn't look at you. She keeps her eyes on the cart as it trundles away. "To the temple," she says, her voice flat. You had heard the name whispered before. It is known by another, more common name among the women of Yoshiwara, Komi-dare, the throwaway temple. This is the final destination for the women who die in debt. A proper funeral is expensive. It requires a coffin, a priest, a ceremony. These are costs the brothel owner will not bear for an asset that is no longer earning. So, the dead woman, still legally the property of the house because of her debt, is treated as what she is, refuse. She is rolled in the straw that she died on, carried out unceremoniously, and taken to JOK&G. There, behind the temple, is a large, unmarked pit, a mass grave. She is thrown in, nameless and unremorbid, with the other fallen flowers of the floating world. This practice was the ultimate to love dehumanization. It was the final declaration that these women were not people, but commodities whose value had expired. There was no plaque, no marker, no name. The woman's entire existence, her years of work, her pain, her brief moments of joy, were erased, tossed into a hole in the ground. The historical and ethical debate over this practice is settled. It was a profoundly cruel end to a life of exploitation. The reasoning, however, is still analyzed. Was it purely economic? A simple refusal to spend money on the dead? Or was it also a form of social control? A final, terrifying warning to the living. Seeing a sister disposed of like garbage was a powerful reminder to the other women of their own precarious position and the ultimate consequence of failure. Hannah finally turns to you. Her eyes dark with a sorrow so deep it seems ancient. She owned nothing, Hannah says, her voice barely a whisper. Not her clothes, not her name, not even her body. The debt holds, even in death. The house will not pay to bury what it does not truly own. Her words land with the finality of a stone sealing a tomb. All the other horrors, the black teeth, the lead paint, the mercury cures, the public shaming, they were all things done to you in life. This was the final indignity. There is no escape, not in freedom, not in love, and not even in death. Your very bones are just another bad debt to be disposed of as cheaply as possible. You look down at your own hands, at the body you inhabit. You see the fine silk of your kimono. You feel the weight of the pins in your hair. For years, you have been taught to see this body as a work of art, an instrument, a commodity. Now you see it for what it truly is in the eyes of this world. Future garbage, a bundle of flesh and bone to one day be wrapped in a straw mat and thrown away. The performance is over. The last and most deeply cherished illusion that you are, at your core, a person with a soul worthy of remembrance has been shattered. You look out over the glittering, lantern-lit world of Yoshiwara, and see it for what it is, a beautiful, elaborate tomb, and you are already inside it.